welcome to another unboxing video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're taking a look at a slightly older game. It's not old, but it's not a new game. It's called Crusade and Revolution, the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939. Put out by Compass Games. This is the second edition, which... there it is. I know it's set on the front. Sorry, I'm upside down being blind. So this is a game that's designed by David Gomez Reloso. I presume is Spanish. But this is apparently the kind of Spanish Civil War game, is what I've been told. This is a card-driven, point-to-point, two-player game. But I've been interested in the Spanish Civil War from a book standpoint, reading a little bit about it, and I realized we don't have any games. We haven't ever played a game about it. Not that I can remember anyway. Grant had recently played Resist, which is a kind of it's a bit end or post World War II, or a post kind of World War II, post Civil War, where you're resisting Franco's regime after it's established. But the idea of the thing got me very interested in the topic. So this is a very big box. This is not your average war game box size. For reference, this is the normal Compass Games size box. So this is a good chunk bigger. Spoiler alert, this is coming up on the channel soon as well. But it's also extremely heavy because it has two fully mounted maps in it. So let's flip it over onto the back. And you got yourself two big mounted maps, and it's obviously Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, and you got yourself all of these point-to-point maps on here. So you have, I believe it's like the Nationalists and the Republicans are the two factions in this. So the Nationalists is obviously the old military and aristocracy, and it's led by Franco's got to come across from Morocco, I believe, and all that. And then the Republicans, it's a coalition of anarchists and communists and other smaller groups, and it's them, fighting over Spain. That's what we're getting in this game. So, 3-hour game apparently, 2 players, CDG. So you're either going to use it, again, very heavy, like a solitaire method for this, or you want to play this 2-player. So let's crack it open and see what we get. Also, a thing to note, this is one of those linen finished boxes with very thick walls. It's a very heavy game, but it's a very sturdy box. So I appreciate that very much. It's not one of those kind of flimsy older boxes that you used to get from all the old war game companies 20 years ago. This is a very nice addition. So, a couple things. 2d6, and I actually really like these dice. They are very large pips, and they're bigger, they're not the tiny little 6mm dice. These are large, at least 12. But they roll nicely. Love a good, nice set of dice. I like it when it's not the little chintzy ones. We have a stack of counter sheets that are pre-rounded. We will take a look at those here in just a second. 2 decks of cards, Republican deck, Nationalist deck. Also take care of those here in just a little bit. But the rulebook and the playbook combined is where we're going to start off with this. So something that's very unique about this is that this is kind of a, I don't know what you would call this, I'm not into book publishing, but this is kind of has a flat bound spine. This thing is a graphic novel in size. It's a combined rules and playbook, so don't let that scare you off, but it is a hefty book. Which is, nice, big second edition. So there's like 30 pages of rules, and then the rest of it is the playbook. So the rules themselves, it's a lot of full-color, semi-gloss diagrams and explanations, game setup, explains how the cards works, all the systems, the stacking, all the combat, supply rules, replacements, and then your war progress track. And then some special rules for a couple different exceptions. And then some clarifications. That's the rules. It's actually, yeah, sure. It might be 30-odd pages of rules, but that's not terribly daunting. It's not like there's a whole bunch of extra weird stuff in there that you've got to figure out. So not terrible. And then the playbook has a lot of history and designer notes and optional bits and pieces, and then the scenario setups is where we're at with this. So we've got all sorts of different setups that we can do, and then some very detailed combat examples. So yeah, I don't know. Most of the, whilst this is a hefty tome, I do appreciate that, but a significant amount of it is not rules or things that you have to learn to play. So just understand that. Don't be scared off by that in any way. So the next thing we have here is a couple different play aid sheets and markers. So we've got these two what look like identical sheets, and these are dual-sided. And they're so event sheets, different markers that are going on. So this is the markers card. And then these are all of the different types of counters and markers that you've got in the game as well. And then we have a bifold paper play aid, and there's two of these, one for each player. And these are identical. It's not like there's different ones for each player or anything like that. But this has your usual firing tables for different sized units. If you think about something like Paths of Glory, that will be something quite familiar to you. Different strength and size units, you know, they act differently. They have different combat results tables. Terrain effects chart, all your different replacements and redeployment summaries, sequence of play. So we do have this big tome, but by the looks of this, I'm going to read that once, and then I'm going to play off of this, and that should make the learning curve fairly shallow, which I appreciate very much. And then you've got these morale tables and victory point tables as well. So that's all of the play aids and kind of the papery stuff in here. So let's take a look at the counters. Again, this is, let's see, this particular edition was printed in, I think 2018. So the move that Compass Games has made towards pre-rounded counters, especially on these nice thick boards, 2018, this might have been one of the few games that they did that with, but in the past, 2 or 3 years, I guess it's close to 2018, there's been a lot more of this, and I love it. It's really nice. Look at the size of these counters. These aren't quite 1-inch counters, but they are huge compared to, your standard other war games that you're going to get. They're very big, they're very bold, and extremely crisp and clear. And those are well-centered and well-rounded. And when you pop them out, it's great. Huge fan of this. Really, really nice. And they have a reduced side on them as well, obviously. So this is, these are Republican units in red, and the Nationalist units are in blue. We've got some out-of-supply markers, and then some French border supply and Portuguese border supply as well. And, oh, no, I turned it upside down. So these, we have some movement and retreated markers. Presumably you'll place those on stacks after they have or before they will do things. Put out all your plans and then have them executed. I presume these are control markers. So you've got the two different, you've got the Nationalist flag on the blue. See, they just fall out. And then on the back you got the Republican flag on the red background for control of spaces. We've also got some fortified position markers, some aid markers, and all sorts of different markers, which might tie into some of those events that go on, but there's probably some different tracks that we'll have a look at here as well. More units for both sides. So we've got these red positions and trenches, and these blue positions and trenches, and then a few more Nationalist units here as well. And these are kind of all square. You don't see boards like that very often, but those are very, very nice, very high quality counters, which we're a big, big fan of. Then we're going to take a look at the cards. So we've got 2 decks, and these have a very obvious and very easy, kind of easy peel. If you've watched any other CDG unboxing videos, you've seen me struggle or I had to give a knife out of, so I appreciate that. I don't have to embarrass myself. So yeah, Republican side cards, you're going to have 2 separate decks, one for each side. But the cards are going to be exactly what you kind of think that they are. So you've got the ops value in the top left-hand corner going on, or you have an event down here as well. Or I'll presume they have a function with being spent for replacement points, or potentially Soviet aid, it looks like, that you can invest those into that so you get more aid coming on later on in the board. But they all have what I famously really enjoy is historical photographs from the war at the top. Again, I'm a big fan of that. I just think it helps to, especially when it's, you know, when it's stuff from the 19th century, we've got photographs of the stuff. Let's stick it all on there so we can kind of see all that. I appreciate that very much. And then we have the same thing for the nationalist side as well. Again, extremely easy to open that. Love that. Don't have to embarrass myself. And these kind of have the blue hue on them as well, but it's the same style of card makeup. But yeah, you're going to have decks of cards, and I don't see any that have like dates on them where you kind of see the deck historically, so I think we're just going to play through these, which would be nice. But that's the decks of cards. And the last thing that we've got in this box, I had to kind of save it because they are 2 very large boards, and that's, if you look, these fit the size of this box. They gave you that bigger box and they filled it up with these boards. So, and these aren't your traditional kind of 4 folds. It's just, or 8 quadranted ones. I don't know how you would say that. So this is the first board, and it is huge. But the spaces are very large. All the connections very easy to read, and all the names are above the spaces, not in them, like I've seen in some games. We've got a turn track down here, and then we've got a general records track for all of your replacement points and presumably aid and bits and pieces like that. We've got Mallorca down here, then the Army of Africa down there as well. And so the other board, he says, trying to open it, it's like this. They just slot together like that. And because they're big mounted boards, there's no overlap or anything like that that you have to worry about. So this is huge. There's probably, on my table, which is, I think my table is 3 by 5. I have about 4 inches of space down there and 4 inches of spaces up here. And I've probably got 10 inches of space on either side of the board that way. So you do your maths in your imperial system and figure out how big this is, but this is a very large and spacious and luxurious board. But yeah, you've got, obviously Portugal's got nothing in it, France has got nothing in it, but that's all the way up here. I don't know if you can even see that. But that's where you're going to get those French border aid and Portuguese border aid as they kind of help one side or the other. Little terrain key over here, and then some different objectives and your Republican actions. And maybe I don't know, I might be ignorant of the fact, but it looks like this does use a very similar kind of system to Paths of Glory. And what I mean by that is if you look at the cards, it's very much you can do this type of one once per turn, this type of thing once per turn. The same card between replacement points and things can't be done consecutively. So I think the way that you have those limitations of what you can play in a turn, at a glance, shares a lot of that similarity. So I hope that that's the case, because that was also a really fun system to play in. But this is everything that you get inside Crusade and Revolution. Now, I bought this from Noble Knight Games. It was their last copy at the time, and it wasn't cheap. Now, it's not cheap because the components are extremely nice, but also I think it's not currently in print, which is, so the price is a little more expensive. But keep an eye out for this if this is something that you're interested in. I was reliably informed that this is like the Spanish Civil War game, and I wanted to kind of dive in and play it, so this is something that we'll get to eventually, especially if we can really play it in 3 hours. That'd be really nice. I don't know if that's realistic or not. It might. I hope it is, but maybe that's for very experienced players, and maybe there's a short version that does that, and the longer ones are a bit more time. But if you're interested, check this out. I didn't know it was this big and nice when I bought the thing. I thought that it was just kind of OOP, and so it had a hefty price tag on it. But when it came in the mail and it was so big and nice and well produced, I thought, ah, okay. I feel much better about having paid what I did for it anyway. But Crusade and Revolution from Compass Games, check it out if it's something that you might be interested in. Appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.